She's not gonna have her,
No, that's gonna ask.
that is.
My mom, your Mimi and Gigi, and I'm so thankful that you're all here. I couldn't do this alone. Mom's final wish was to join my father here at the Simpleview Memorial Park. My brother and I came in 1973, and he was placed in there. And my mom picked this place because of the beautiful ocean view. My father and she had a great love of the ocean. My father was a fisherman. He loved to fish. He boated. They had a boat. They lived their early years of their marriage in Newport Beach here. And even though my father was a World War II veteran and he could have been in one of the national cemeteries, my mom opted not to do that because she wanted him to always have the view of the ocean that he loved so much and meant so much to them. So that's why she picked Pacific View, which I think is a beautiful place. And I was here yesterday kind of looking around, and I was reminded of Bruce's and my journeys to bring my dad here. And now we're doing our final journey to bring my mom here. She's been alive for 50 more years than my dad, and so she was the lucky recipient of beautiful family members like grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So on her plate, we're going to give her all her designations. It's going to say Lois M. McDonald, 1932 to 2023, beloved wife, mother, Mimi, and Gigi. Okay, so she's going to be in your thoughts all the time. I think that's really all I have to say, except for one last thing. Mom and I did a lot of prayer, especially in the last 6 months of her life, and she was definitely a strong Christian faith woman, and she requested that I tell all of you that are here today that she hopes that you also believe in God and Jesus in your hearts, even if you're not out there proclaiming it on street corners and holding up signs like she didn't. She was kind of a quiet believer, because she wants to see you all again in heaven. And she's been requesting to go to heaven for a while, but she got her wish. So next up is going to be, Rob's going to do an opening prayer for us.
Sure.
Mom, Lois Marie Platanger McDonald. She's very proud of her French roots, and Platanger, even though it's Americanized, she liked to be known as Platanger. She's French. She had a very adventurous spirit her whole life. I thought she was very courageous, and she was very determined. I think those are just a tiny smattering of words to describe my mother. I think she was a very courageous, determined, and adventurous person to leave Canada, her homeland, at only age 21. She and her girlfriend boarded a train, and they came to California with their green cards and their nursing licenses. And they took jobs in Huntington Hospital in Pasadena. And the very first thing they wanted to do when they came to California was go to the beach. And it was the month of December or January. It was very cold. But to them, it was so warm compared to Canada. They went adventuring into the waters, and all the people thought they were crazy people. You know, they were in their warm coats, and there they are running around the beach in their bathing suits and having a good old time. She said the water felt so refreshing, so renewing. So you can see how important beach life was to her. Anyway, she left behind Canada, and she came to California, and she never looked back. She said she never missed the snow. She would only visit her family in summertime. So I'm really glad she did that, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. She met my dad within the first 2 years of living here. They got married. They moved to Newport Beach. I was born, Bruce was born, and then they moved inland to Tustin, the town of Tustin, where I was mostly raised there at all the schools and whatnot, and Bruce as well. She was a stay-at-home mom that loved to garden and golf and play bridge and have tea parties, and she had a huge group of friends. She was very sociable. And then a huge tragedy came to her when my father died very suddenly of a heart attack in 1973. Bruce and I were pretty young, 15 and 13, and our mom persevered through a very, very hard time in her life. She soldiered on, and Bruce and I and my mom were a little threesome. We were very tight, and we got through those years and did our high school graduations, college graduations, etc. Anyway, my mom was definitely a strong woman, and I believe Bruce and I got a lot of our strength straight through our mom.
I agree.
Later in life, she enjoyed her trips to Europe, Australia, the Grand Canyon river rafting, which I think you guys have all heard all the crazy stuff that happened on that trip, her parasailing in her 70s to Mexico, and a lot of Hawaiian trips. So her adventuresome spirit was always there, always there. She was still thinking of trips, even in these last few months. So she loved it. That's all I have to say. So I have a lot more I could say, but I'm not going to keep going on. So it's open forum. You guys we can go around or just popcorn prayer it or whatever you want to do.
I decided to go at the end, so
You wanna be last.
after everyone
Okay.
else is gone, then I'll go.
Sounds good?
Well, I remember one thing that really stuck with me about her was, I think she was about 75. And we went to her place and you really wanted to pick up her bike and I think move it somewhere else because she wasn't really using it anymore. I just remember how she demonstrated a lot of self-direction. She really she wanted to try to ride it again. And I was impressed with that because, she's 75 and she's like, I want to get on this bike. She hops off, goes about, 10 meters and crashes.
I think she gave up the bicycle out that day. Maybe it's not going to work
I
out.
think that was the last time. Actually, I think she wanted me to pump up the tires so she could try it out again.
That's another example of her determination.
Yes.
She's going to try. That's funny.
So that stuck with me, and I can see where my dad gets a lot of his determinedness, just goes straight into things and just want to make it happen. So I really admired that trait about her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did a series of interviews with Mimi in college. I think I did 6 hours. 6 hours of interviews just about her life and where she came from. And what year was she born in?
32.
32. Did you guys know that when she was a girl that she had all of her things delivered via horse-drawn carriage to her house? She had an ice man because they didn't have a refrigerator, they had an ice box. They had a milkman, they had the bread man, they had all of that. And then she grew up and she got her degree and she came to California, she drove in a car. Astronauts went to the moon. She lived a long, full life and she saw the whole gamut of everything. And she's a very strong, proud woman. She had a good life.
She had a good life.
Agreed.
Oh, sure, I can go. So as I've been reflecting about Mimi over these past few weeks and thinking about how much she meant to me and how much I loved her, I've been thinking a lot about her legacy and her different qualities and characteristics that I see in all of us that have been passed down, and many have been mentioned already. But a few more that I wanted to talk about with her was, one is how intentional with her time she was. She always spent her time so meaningfully, and I think she experienced so much in her life that showed that every day was a gift, and we're so grateful that she had so many days to spend so intentionally with us. And I know now as a parent that is very generous to give up your time and your comfort to teach kids how to play cribbage or Scrabble and go swimming with us and take us on walks, and she would babysit us for weeks at a time so mom and dad could get away and make sure their marriage stayed strong. So she was really a huge part of me growing up, all of us growing up, and she was just very purposeful in the way that she invested in each one of us and got to know us so well and would help us with our struggles and our weaknesses and always give us praise for everything that we did well too, and encouragement. And I also just thought a lot about her competitive nature and how that's in all of us too, and yet I think coupled with that is she really valued integrity a lot. So it wasn't fun to win if you did it by cheating. So you had to do it the right way to win, otherwise it wasn't winning. And I feel like that's something that I really believe strongly, and now I'm thinking it probably came from her. I also loved how she treasured what was beautiful in life, from gardening to the way that she cared for her home and surrounded herself with beautiful artwork and just like valued things that were, orderly and neat and beautiful. And I feel like that's something that all of us appreciate too because of her. And Mom already mentioned her bravery. How she left Canada all on her own, how she struck out on many adventures through life. She faced single motherhood. She even left, an abusive husband, and she was so brave through every aspect of that, and was just an example of courage to us all. And I think all of these character traits were motivated by love, and that was the overarching quality that you can see in her, that she spent time with us because she loved us. She played with us because she loved us. And on the last day that I got to spend with her, I read 1 Corinthians 13 to her, which is known as one of the love passages in the Bible. And as I was reading through it, the last verse that I came across was 1 Corinthians 13:12, which says, "For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known." And it just struck me that she was soon going to she has been fully known by the love of God her whole life, and now she sees him face to face. It was dim, but now she's seeing him face to face. And so that as I was reading through that, it really struck me that she was experiencing this right now. So with all of that, to help me sort of process and grieve, I wrote a short poem that I wanted to read for her. Okay, it's on my phone right now. It's called Spring is Near. When butterfly wings whisper near, memories of you will be clear. When fragrant roses burst into bloom, you will fill our heart's room. When spring's warm breeze does blow, a wellspring of hope will overflow, because we know you are with your Lord, and you in his arms he will hold. Your love and kindness echo on. Your beauty and cheerful faith can never be gone. We will be brave just like you. Your generosity and compassion will clothe us too. For now winter is here, but spring, oh spring is near.
Beautiful. Thank you. Beautiful.
One of the final things my mom said in her hospital room, which not all of you heard, she sat up in bed and said, "Language," 3 times. And we all just looked at each other, and she loved the English language and French and all of the different languages she thought were so beautiful. So for Kristen to do the poem, I think it's almost like a direct thing straight to you, Kristen, in terms of language. She loved reading so much. Excuse me.
I feel, in a way, Mimi was to me like one of my only true grandparents. Even though I had other grandparents, I wasn't as close to anyone as I was with Mimi. So I was able to share a lot with her and learn a lot through her. And her courageous spirit was definitely inspiring and has been through my life. And she's always been my confidant that kind of keeps my secrets and walks me through life. And I always, wanted to treat her the best that I could and be with her whenever she needed somebody. And I'll miss her dearly.
She just loved every single one of you that's in this room so, so much. And her final words were, I love you and I just love my family. And she said it many times. So, third-born child. Mom was a third-born child, and she really hit that with Jason.
She could relate.
Totally. I was going like Claire, third-born child.
We did have a strong connection.
Those third-borns. Does anybody else want to say anything? The grandchildren can if they wish.
And or do you want to say something?
I think Grandma.
So the first time I ever met Mimi, I think it must have been Christmas or something. There was a ping pong table set up outside. And so we were playing ping pong, and I wasn't really trying. It was just first time of the year, I want to leave a good impression. So we were done, and then I, walked away, and she took me to the side, and she said, come here. And she whispered in my ear, if you want to be in this family, you're going to have to be a little more competitive. And then I knew from that point on,
That's
there was
beautiful.
no Mexican trade or anything. We were playing.
That's hilarious. I never knew
Beautiful.
that before. That kind of wraps her up
That's
right there.
beautiful. Yeah.
Anytime Brock has a mustache, I always think of it as a moustache because of Mimi.
Her French.
I will always say moustache because of that. And then the last thing is we got to see her not as frequently when these guys were little, but we did get to spend quality time. And I remember her smile. When she smiled and laughed, it was contagious and it just lit up the room. And when you guys made her laugh, it made me happy. That was very special.
She had a dear, dear, dear love of the great grandchildren. She loved being called the Gigi. Another little nickname. But Mimi first, then Gigi. Thank you for sharing. That's really sweet.
I can share.
Rob?
Well, I think my first introduction was not as a member of the family, but when Lois was a lunch lady at Zion, where we went to school. And I think like many young boys, lunchtime was a time to get energy out and maybe push the boundaries a little bit. And so my first introduction to her was usually getting in trouble for something. She was always very kind, but I think she thought I was a little bit rebellious. And over the years, as Krista and I began our relationship, she would occasionally remind me of those times.
Did she?
She would bring it up. She would say, I'm glad you grew out of those rebellious years. You gave me some trouble. But I was really encouraged because she would always say, but I'm really happy that you have married Kristen. And she would, like, every time when we would leave, she would say, you're a great husband and a great father. And I really appreciate you doing this. So that was a huge encouragement. And I think, as was mentioned, we see a lot of Mimi in Claire and in her personality and being determined and brave and adventurous, sometimes stubborn. And so, there's a little bit of her in all of them, but I think especially we see that, and so we'll always be reminded, even during the tough moments, that it's just a part of who she is, and you know, that all of our kids grow up to reflect different parts of her.
Thank you. Beautiful.
That was sweet. Does anybody else want to say anything before Bruce? Oh, Cecily. Yes, absolutely, anything.
Of course.
I remembered her laugh, and it always made me remember her.
You got part of your Mimi right in you. Gigi. Mimi Gigi.
Yeah, she loved you very much. Especially your beautiful, beautiful smiling self.
I only have one story about Lois, Mimi, Mom. We were at the table having lunch, and she was complaining about the color of her room for like the 15th time. So I looked at her and I said, Lois, what do you say we paint your room? You would do that? We'll get some color splotches. So we put 3 8-inch color splotches on the wall. And she had 2 weeks to decide. It was always number 1 on the left until we were going to buy the paint. Then it was number 3. So we timed it so Lois was out with Angie on a shopping adventure and got the room done.
Painted.
It was, and she, I think she really enjoyed that. That's when I kind of went over the hump with her. Sometimes it's not easy to like me, but she came around pretty fast. Anyway, she was a fabulous lady, and I miss her. And Laurel's, of course, been with her for the last 5 years. She's going on to a new life adventure in a quiet house. So it's going to be an adventure for the whole family, really. I mean, everybody in this room is going to mourn and suffer and laugh and grieve about her being gone. So. Love you, Lois. Oh, well, I think I said it last night, but every once in a while I'd come up and whisper in her ear, Lois, you want to have a snort? And it's like 7:30 at night, and she's got this big smile on her face. It had to be neat, and it had to be no ice, and we sat at the kitchen table and talk, and she just enjoyed those few moments she got where, maybe not towards the very end, she wasn't really in that kind of a mood, but, you know, 2 months ago, she was ready. She had a fabulous Thanksgiving, thanks to everybody in this room. Personally, I think it was one of my favorite Thanksgivings of my life. So, anyway, she really had a good time that day. I think everybody helped her with her fluids. So, I don't know how many glasses of wine she had, but she had plenty.
Quite a few.
Anyway.
She said that
precious.
she needed to drink that whiskey because she was born and raised in Canada and it warmed her up. So I was like, oh, it's fine.
I just wanted to say, we're just honored to be here today. Thank you so much. Just to be a part of Lois's celebration of life. She meant so much to us, and really, I have one story, I guess. So after Thanksgiving, Laurel had chorale practice, so I would go over and sit with Lois, and we would play cards or Mexican Train. Well, it had been a while since she played Mexican Train, so one time she asked me to read the instructions, so I did. And then the next week I came over to play, and she beat me. Talk about competitive. So happy. And I said, I'm not helping you anymore. It's all over with now. But, you know, one thing that really I will always remember about Lois is you knew that if you were going to see her, there would be laughter. You knew you'd be laughing, and you know, whatever you were doing, it would be fun. And she had that about her. And she even had it in the hospital. You know, she carried that through her life right to the end, and
She did.
I'll always remember that.
I got to know Lois a little better in a sad time, but when Pete was sick, she fell and broke her shoulder, humerus, I forget exactly what. But, I said, come live with us for, I think she got to 6 weeks, and so we got to know each other a lot better then. She was just a kind and wonderful woman and very determined. She loved her independence, and that was kind of when she first started losing it.
Yes.
Not losing it here, losing her independence, losing her physical injury. So there was, I don't know, there was something that we did or didn't do that she was getting antsy to go back home. And she said, I'm ready to go home, Chuck. I said, Lois, you're not ready. You really aren't. And said, besides, you can't drive, your arm's in this thing. She said, Bruce taught me how to use Uber. I'll call an Uber. She didn't, but
She threatened. Oh, that's
I
great.
think you called me up and we had a chat about it, and I had to call my mom and have a chat about it. Hold on, you can wait just a little bit longer.
That is
she was
great.
able to laugh about that.
That's that determined spirit.
That's determined, yeah. She wasn't, who cares about a broken arm? There's always Uber. Oh, that's so great. I think everyone has said something except for me. So I'm going to hand the camera over to Alan here. And I think the lighting's pretty good over here. Let me see what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so we all have different memories of my mom, and all said the Keith, I thought I could stop crying.
It's okay.
I know. Anyway, she had a spirit of adventure. She liked to have fun. She's very independent, very strong, and set a good example for all of us, for sure. But I just want to give a few stories about it. And Rock, I didn't remember that you also did interviews with Mimi. I've got 6 or 8 hours of video interviews we should share sometimes. See if the stories agree with each other.
I've been trying to recover mine, they were audio only.
Oh, okay, I got video, so we can share and see if we're getting the stories correlate well. But one of her stories was from that time in nursing school. And back in those days, of course, a good nurse should be under a very strong curfew and be in bed at a good hour every night. And I think after the first year of nursing school, she sort of figured out how things worked. And she wanted to go out dancing with 1 or 2 other nurses, probably her friend Betty. And they discovered a window that could be unlocked, and they could sneak out that window and then come back in a few hours later. And so she would take off and do some dancing with her friend, and that's a young, probably 20-year-old mom taking off to do dancing, which reminds me a little bit about the dancing widow that came after our father died, and she did go out on some dates, not a lot of dates, with other men, and mostly to a club where she could dance, so she liked to dance, I would say. Then the second story I want to tell is with me. It's involving me very directly, and Laura will remember this. And it was when I was about 15 years old, and I came home from school one day, and both my mom and Laura were standing there, kind of waiting for me, which was unusual. And as I walked in, my mom said, Bruce, the cat, Fred, he just threw up. And since you are his favorite lap nowadays, we think you need to clean it up. And as I suppose is the case for a lot of 15-year-old boys with 2 women in the house, I had not been asked to do these sorts of household duties before, and I have to admit I was a bit squeamish about the thing, because I walked into that room and there was a big pile of vomit, and I looked at it and was like, well, what do I do? I want to go get some paper towels and, start mopping it up. So I went out to the kitchen, got some paper towels, walked back into that room and kind of reached out very carefully, touched it, and it just came up. One whole thing. It was a piece of plastic. She had bought at a joke shop.
She had played it on me earlier in the day, and I said, we're doing it on him next.
Okay, so I was the second victim of this humor.
I had to see it.
And I think over the years, that piece of garbage probably came up more than a few times.
I think you used it a lot.
Friends and family. I probably loved it, probably became my favorite go-to humor at that point. The third story I'll tell is when we were together in Australia, and we were in the state of Queensland, where they have a beautiful tropical rainforest area. And we were staying at a place called the Binnaburra Lodge, and it was a little beautiful mountain lodge in the middle of the national park, and it was surrounded by trails. So it's all about hiking and seeing the wildlife. And any of you who have hiked with me will know that it's dangerous to go hiking with me because I usually just set straight out without a compass and have a little map and just say, let's go this direction. Anyway, on the first hike there, I set out on what I thought was going to be a 7-mile hike, which is a pretty good distance for a 64-year-old lady, which is, now that I'm almost that age, I have a feeling of how it would work. I missed a turnoff, and it turned into an 11-mile hike. And that extra 4 miles was through a swampy part of the forest that had lots of leeches. And we had heard about the leeches before we started the hike, and that's why I chose the hike that did not go through the leech fields. We saw a couple, but at the end of that hike, we got back to the lodge just in time for dinner, and then listened to the people at the table next to ours describing how many leeches they peeled off their legs after doing that hike on that day. And my mom just, she, no problem, she didn't complain or lick, she just stayed with it. She just wanted to make sure we got home, back to the lodge in time for dinner, and that was all we needed. And then about 10 years later is when she did her rafting trip down the Grand Canyon. About the same time, her parasailing thing behind a fast boat in Mexico. There was a bike ride, a sunrise bike ride down the Hawaiian volcano, and she had a spirit of adventure.
Mama,
she lived a good life. She lived a full life. She set a good example for me. I have to indicate it. I'll miss her.
Absolutely.
We all miss her. That's it.
right here.
So, thanks for being told a few stories.
I'm sure we have many more stories that we can share, but
Many stories.
I wanted to read to you the Serenity Prayer. I was going through her desk, and she's married in her second marriage, and she used this prayer to help bolster her and strengthen her. And when I found it, I said, oh my goodness, this is what they use in the 12-step program through AA. But she was in a group called Overcomers Anonymous, and it was during that time when she was gathering up her strength to decide to leave that marriage. And she used this prayer a lot, and when I found it in her desk, I thought I should read it to you guys. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
Amen.
All of you butterflies,
for the rest of your lives. And when you see the butterflies, please think of me.
Those are mine.
It's a good symbol.
My brother and I did my dad with my mom, so this is like awesome. We get so many other people out here that she just loved her family so much. She'd be like really happy that you're giving her some extra hugs and kisses right here. You're just saying, I love you, Gigi. I love you, Mimi. Hugs and kisses. Because once it's sealed up, it's never going to be opened again. I'm going to put her butterfly in. It's gold. Scissor. Oh my gosh, I was going to have us sing Amazing Grace, but...
Sherry's doing that for us.
Well, I sang her Amazing Grace the last 5 minutes of her life. And a cappella, no help. The nurses said it was pretty good. Of course. Oh, Rosie.
And so she's just gonna go right on top of my
Lots of fingerprints, lots of hugs and kisses.
Stick your thumb all over that thing. Love you, Mommy. Butterfly with Daddy, too. So glad she left Canada.
Indeed. It would be a completely different story. If we were all in Canada, oh my God.
Okay.
That's good.